Hi everyone, welcome to or back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the 8 books I read in February. Technically I'm going to be talking about 9 books, but one of them was a DNF. But other than that DNF, February was actually a really quite good reading month for me. I rated nothing less than a 3-star, so pretty good. I still haven't found a 5-star read this year, but I'm not putting pressure on myself. I feel like as soon as I start putting the pressure on myself to find a book that I absolutely adore, I don't want to read and I end up not enjoying the books I'm reading as much. So I'm not going to pressure myself into finding a 5-star book. I still read some great books this month. I'm going to start with the DNF and then go from the lowest rated to the highest rated. If you're familiar with my wrap-ups, you'll know that at the end of the video I pull out a book from my TBR jar. I'm not going to do that anymore because I feel like it puts, again, pressure on me to read. As soon as I have to read a book, I don't want to read the book, and so I feel like it's just not working. And also I'm actually reading quite a lot of the books that I've had for quite a while. I don't think that it's necessary that I have to pull a book out of the jar in order to read books on my physical TBR. I'm doing it anyway, and also I don't actually care if books sit unread on my shelves for a while. So if I'm not that bothered about it, why am I putting this pressure on myself to read as many books on my physical TBR as possible? I just don't think it's necessary to do anymore. I have also got like video plans where I'm going to be reading books that I've already got on my shelves, so I just, like I say, don't think it's necessary. But that being said, let's get straight on into the books. I don't have many physical books to hold up because I'm still on my ebook kick. I'm loving ebooks at the minute, so yeah, not many physicals. But the first one that I'm going to talk to you about is the DNF, which is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. If you watched my Giving Authors a Second Chance video, you will have seen that I DNF'd this one. I just found it boring, to be honest. We are following this woman called Amber, and at the start of the book we find out she's in a coma, and then we go back a week before and it's kind of building up to this event and what happened, how she got into this coma. I got about halfway through and just decided to give up with it. It was a quick read, so if you have this on your shelves and you're thinking about picking it up, I will say it is quick to get through. I could have read through it and I probably could have finished it in a day, but I wasn't enjoying it, and I thought, if I'm going to finish this, rate it a low rating. What's the point in finishing it just to add a number on to my books read list, if you know what I mean? So I decided to put this one down. I've heard some mixed things about the ending, so I'm pretty pleased that I didn't get to it because it seems a bit of a controversial one. So I'm, to be honest, pretty pleased that I didn't finish this one, and I will be unhauling it. The book that I gave 3 stars was Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. I also read this for the Giving Authors a Second Chance video because I had read Everything I Know About Love by the same author and rated that one 3 stars as well. Something that I have found though through both of these books is that I really do like Dolly Alderton's writing, and I think she is hilarious. This book made me laugh out loud in places, and I do really think that she has a great writing style. So I do think there is a book of hers that will be for me, whether that's one that has been published or whether that's one to come, I don't know, but I definitely will pick her books up again. I think I just need to be fully into the synopsis before I do, because this one, while I thought I would like it, it turned out not to be entirely for me. I basically am rating this 3 stars for the writing rather than the plot. I didn't particularly like the characters. I didn't really like our main character. We're following Nina, and she is 32, she's just turned 32, and we are essentially following her 32nd year of life. We meet her friends and her family, and we also follow her as she kind of journeys into dating. She has kind of got her life on track. She split up from her longtime partner, who she's still friends with, so there's kind of a bit of that in here where they're juggling their friendship while he's also with someone new and she's trying to date. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, so we're following that situation. Her mum and dad, she doesn't have the best relationship with her mum, and she's really close with her dad. Their relationship was nice to read about, but he is quite ill. So it did become quite sad to read, but you really got to see their relationship and that kind of grief of losing someone who's not actually gone yet, but the person that you knew has, if that makes sense. So I found that really, really good. I just didn't love Nina as a main character, and ultimately it just wasn't for me. But as I said before, I definitely am willing to pick up another one of Dolly Alderton's books, because I do think that she could potentially be a 5-star author for me if the right book comes along. Moving on to my 3.5-star books, the first one I'm going to talk to you about is Brown Girls by Daphne Palazzi Andreades. This is a really interesting one. We are essentially following what it's like for brown girls living and growing up in Queens, and we are following various different topics such as education and relationships and what those experiences are like for brown girls living in Queens. I liked how this was told, and to be honest, the way it was told is more memorable to me than a lot of the plot. It's told in a series of vignettes, and I typically don't enjoy that, but in this instance I thought it was really quite good. It's also told in a first-person plural format, which I think is a really interesting way of telling this story. I have seen some reviews that don't particularly like that, because it is essentially grouping all these different cultures and nationalities all together, but I think that a lot of the experiences that these girls in this book face are experiences that white women and girls don't experience, because we have that white privilege. So I feel like it was an interesting technique to use by doing this. I can understand why people wouldn't like it for those reasons, but obviously I can't speak on that. I am not one of these girls that this book is written about or for. I can just say that I enjoyed the way it was written and I thought it was really interesting. But that being said, the reason why I didn't give this a higher rating was because I didn't find it that memorable. Almost a month later, I can't really remember much of what this book was about. I more so remember the way it was told and how that was effective for me as the reader. So a 3.5 star, I did enjoy this and I will want to pick up some more from this author. I do think that the potential is there for me to really love one of her books, but this one just didn't quite meet the mark for me in terms of being absolutely fantastic. Next up, I read Deluge by Charmaine Wilkerson, and I also rated this one 3.5 stars. This one is a short story. It's like 30 something pages. I was just so in the mood for reading some of Charmaine Wilkerson's writing. I cannot stop thinking about the book Black Cake, which I read last year and was one of my favourite books of the year and is one of my favourite books of all time. I absolutely love it and I think about it all the time. So I was intrigued to see whether Charmaine Wilkerson had written anything else, and it turns out she has written this short story. And one thing I will say is Charmaine Wilkerson knows how to write difficult familial relationships. She does it so well. In this one, we are essentially following this woman and her parents have died. That's no spoiler, that's right at the beginning of the book. And our main character finds out something pretty detrimental and pretty huge about her life that obviously she cannot speak to her parents about because they are no longer alive. It is so intense. I obviously can't say too much. It is so short. I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say the whole familial aspect of this is so good. She's got a stepfather who is still alive and she is talking to him about what she has found out. I just love Charmaine Wilkerson's writing. I think she's such an incredible writer. I cannot wait for any more novels that she writes. The thing with this one is, obviously it's so short. I think for me, it really takes a lot for a short story to really get a high rating from me because I just want more. And that was what I wanted from this. I wanted more from it, but that being said, it was really good and I do really highly recommend this one. It is on Kindle Unlimited, so I would definitely give it a go if you have Kindle Unlimited, I think it's a really great one to read, and you'll fly through it. Obviously it's 30 odd pages, so yeah, really, really good, but obviously I can't say too much about it. Moving on to the 4-star books, I read The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, and I was expecting this one to be a 5-star. I thought I was going to absolutely adore it. This one is essentially about Joan Didion and how she lived after her husband passed away, and like how she spent the next year. He died suddenly and her daughter was also in a coma at the time, and so it's really heavy. It's really, really quite intense, and it's just her grief process, and it is very, very good, very relatable and very intense. If you find anything to do with grief triggering, I would advise you not to pick this one up. The way Joan Didion wrote this, she really does pull at those heartstrings and make you relate to what she's talking about. It's very, very intense, and I did find it quite emotional and relatable. The reason why I didn't love this one is so specific to me, but it reminded me of my job too much. It's very medical in some places, and I work as a proofreader, specifically a medical proofreader, so a lot of this felt like I was at work, so it took me out of the reading experience completely. Obviously that is a very specific thing, so I feel like if you are not in that field, you won't have that problem, but for me it just felt like I was at work, so it just took me out of it completely, and I just didn't love it for that reason. That being said, I want to read more Joan Didion because she was a fantastic, fantastic writer. I really found with this one that there was a real way with words, and every word counted in this. So yeah, really, really want to pick more up from her. And yeah, I definitely did like this one. It was just a shame because I thought I was gonna adore it. Next up, I read Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson, and obviously I rated this one 4 stars as well. I tend to enjoy books about complex families and familial relationships because this one centres around a teenage pregnancy. We have a bit of a dual timeline in this one. We start off following a girl called Melody, and it turns out Melody's mother had her at 15 years old. And we are seeing the impact of that on each individual character. So Iris's parents, the impact it had on them, the impact that it's had on Melody, because the way Iris chooses to parent Melody obviously really does impact on Melody. And I think this one was really interesting because we see Iris back in the day when she was 15 years old. Obviously she chooses to have this baby, but then she also chooses to go and live a life that a normal teenager would live, a teenager who hasn't had a baby. So it really does impact everyone in the family, but particularly Melody as she's growing up. She doesn't call Iris mum, she calls her Iris. So I feel like that kind of hints at the relationship that they have without going too fully into spoilers. We're also following in this one Melody's dad, and it's all told from these various different perspectives. It is very, very interesting, a lot of complex familial relationships, and it is a really, really good one. Again, this one is a short one. It's less than 200 pages. I've read quite a few short books this month, but it is very, very good. It felt longer than 190 pages or whatever it was. Not in a bad way, but it just felt complete. Like it felt like I was reading a full-length novel about this family and all these decisions that have been made and how they impact each member of the family. It was very, very interesting, and like I said, I rated it 4 stars. Next, I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I read this for my blind date with a book video. I ended up unwrapping Part of Your World, and it was a pleasant surprise. I really did enjoy this one. We're following Alexis, and she is in her 30s. She has split up from her long-term partner, who's really not a very nice man, and she's a doctor. She comes from a long line of doctors. Her family are really quite prestigious in this hospital that she works at. There is a whole ward named after them, and there always has to be a member of their family working at the hospital, like to keep on the tradition. And Alexis's brother has gone off to another country and has married someone else and is no longer working at this hospital, so it kind of all falls on Alexis. And right at the beginning of the book, Alexis ends up driving into this ditch and she gets towed out by this guy called Daniel, and they end up having this one night stand. Alexis finds out that he is much younger than her. He's in his 20s, she's in her late 30s, and it's following their relationship essentially, and it was so good, so sweet. Daniel is such a nice love interest to read about. I feel like I do enjoy reading about my grumpy sunshine dynamics and like enemies to lovers, hate to love, but it's always nice and refreshing to read about a guy who's just nice and is nice to the female main character, and that is what this was. It is intense. Alexis's parents aren't the nicest to her. She's kind of faced abuse and control her whole life, and that really is tackled in this book, especially when it comes to her partner as well. He is really trying to exert some control over her, and Daniel is really helping her to kind of realise that that's what's going on and it's not normal, and teaching her things that she's never known before, things like cooking a meal, cleaning. Like, she's never had to do that because she's come from this rich family, and her not knowing how to do things has made it really easy for people to take advantage of her, manipulate her and control her. So it's also, while it's this really interesting, lovely romance between these two characters, it's also Alexis coming into her own and realising what kind of situation she has been in her entire life. It was so good. I really enjoyed it, and Abby Jimenez is an author that I really want to get into now. I have been wanting to read her books for a while, and this has just kind of kickstarted me into wanting to read them even more. It was so good. The relationship was lovely, the romance was so sweet, and I really enjoyed it. Next up, we've got another disappointment because I expected this to be a 5-star. I thought it was going to be a new favourite book of all time, to be honest, and it is Penance by Eliza Clark. This was really good. I can't deny that it was really good. It is essentially following this fictional true crime, and what happens is that this teenage girl ends up being killed by a group of other teenage girls, and it's this really shocking story that didn't really get much traction. So this true crime writer, or this journalist, decides to write a book about this, and the book is how do I explain this? The book is essentially his true crime book. We are reading this fictionalized true crime. It reads like a true crime book, and that to me sounds perfect. I love true crime. I understand the ethical issues there, but I do enjoy consuming true crime. Those ethical issues are somewhat covered in this, like it's kind of talked about towards the end, but I expected to absolutely fall in love with this. The thing is with this one that I didn't particularly like is that while it says it's this fictional crime, it felt very similar to a crime that has occurred, and it seemed to kind of go against the message of the overall book, which is to do with these ethical dilemmas when it comes to true crime content. So I expected there to be something in the acknowledgements relating to this, or for it to be kind of explained why this was the choice that was made, but it wasn't there. So I feel like it kind of went against everything that it stood for in a way. That being said, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was really quite fantastic, but I can't say it's a favourite, and I can't love it the way that I wanted to because of that reason. It just seems strange to me. I don't know why this crime specifically was chosen, because it's essentially meant to be this fictional crime. She could have chose anything. She could have made it a little bit different, but it is so blatantly obvious that it is this crime. It is that crime that happened in real life to a real teenage girl that I just found it a bit icky, which then puts into question my own thoughts about true crime, and maybe I shouldn't enjoy it as much as I do, and it just put me in a bit of a spiral, to be honest. Like I said, really enjoyed the book. If you enjoy true crime, read it. It is really good, but just go in there mindful about what I have said. Also, I don't know how I feel about how it ended. I think it was a very interesting choice, and it was good, but also it kind of made me again spiral a little bit, because I'm like, right, okay, so what is it that I have just read? Won't say any more because I don't want to spoil anything. It is really good. I do recommend it, but it does have its issues in my opinion. Finally, we're going to talk about my favourite book of the month, my 4.5 star, and it is From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. This was another one that I read for the Giving Authors a Second Chance, and I'm so pleased that I read this one. It was so good. I loved it so much. The only reason why it's not a 5 is because I think it was too long. It's over 500 pages. I don't think any romance needs to be that long, and by the time I got towards the end, I was ready for it to be wrapped up and done, but I still had another 15% to go. I really love the dynamics between these two characters. We're following Jasmine and Ivan, and they don't like each other. They are figure skaters, they skate at the same rink, and they don't like each other, but they end up having to team up and skate together for the season. And oh, it's so good. It is so good. The dynamics between them, the banter, like the taking the mickey out of each other, while still, like, it was quite mean, but you could just see the tension. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. It was such a good slow burn. I feel like when I'm in the mood for a slow burn, Mariana Zapata is the one I'm gonna go to, because I absolutely loved this. Loved the characters. The characters felt so real to me. I absolutely adored it, and I already want to reread it. I loved it so much. But yeah, like I said, it's not quite that 5 star. I thought it was going to be as I was reading it. I really did think it was going to be, but then towards the end I was just like, it is feeling a bit too long now. It read super fast. Like, usually a 500-page book would take me a long time to get through. This took me a few days. It really didn't take me very long at all, and I loved it. So that is it for today's video. It feels really weird not pulling a book out the TBR jar at the end of a wrap up, but like I said, I am reading books off my physical TBR, and it's not necessary to kind of feel forced to read certain books that I'm not in the mood for, because I am a mood reader at heart. I would love to know what your favourite book was that you read in February, and that is it from me. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!